and to let people make their own decisions. Here we invite experts to discuss and explore diverse opinions, different perspectives, various issues, problems, and their solutions on various fields, including art and culture, healthcare, environment, education, and many more. Each webinar is an interactive session with a deeper understanding of the topic at hand. If you miss any part of this session or would like to go through the previous sessions, please visit our website, wishwa.org, or WishwaTalks YouTube channel for a full library of past WishwaTalks on various interesting topics. Some people dedicate their lives to building careers. Others dedicate their lives to understanding people and making the world a little kinder for the next generation. Our speaker today, Professor Manisha, has spent her life doing exactly that. Her journey has taken her across disciplines and continents, earning her a PhD in mass communication from the University of Wisconsin-Madison, USA, and a PhD in education from the Maharaja Sayaji Rao University of Baroda. Her work focuses on understanding the digital lives and cultures of young people, helping parents, educators, and communities navigate an increasingly connected world. Professor Manisha is also the author of Parenting in the Age of Smart Everything, Strategic Communication for Impactful Partnerships, and Gen Z Digital Media and Transcultural Lives. She currently serves as an adjunct professor at MICA Ahmedabad and chairs MICA's Center for Development Management and Communication. Her work has been recognized through several prestigious awards and fellowships, and she has led capacity building programs for educational institutions, nonprofits, government bodies, corporations, and international organizations. Yet, what stands out most about Professor Manisha is not just her impressive accomplishments, but her unwavering commitment to understanding young people and helping create a change that they can flourish. In an age where technology often changes faster than we can keep up, her work reminds us that empathy, connection, and belonging remain at the heart of human growth. It is a true privilege to have with us someone who combines academic excellence with deep compassion and hope for the future. Please join me in extending a very warm welcome and heartfelt welcome to Professor Manisha Pathak Shela to share her insights on parenting in the age of smart everything. Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning, and thank you, Trishant, for that introduction. Hello, everyone. Thanks very much for sharing your presence with me today. And I really admire the work that Vishwa is doing. So this is my second time being with Vishwa. I intend to make today's talk more like a conversation than a one-way talk. So we'll make sure that we leave plenty of time at the end for questions and discussion. And even, in between the talk, I have some questions for you, and I would really appreciate if you quickly put your responses in the chat. Thank you, Pratyusha, for handling the slides. Let's go to slide 2, Pratyusha. I'm going to start with a question. Okay, so my first question to you today is that what is your biggest fear and the biggest hope about your children or your grandchildren's future? Can we quickly have responses in the chat? Something that you fear in a big way or something that you're very hopeful about. Are there any responses in the chat yet? Yes, absolutely valid. We all want that our children lead happy, meaningful lives. Absolutely, addiction to phone, disconnection from nature, very, very important. Too much screen, addiction, lack of empathy. Anyone else? One last one. Okay, so of course you can, keep thinking about this even after we finish this. But it's very true. And this is something, that I have time and again observed with my interaction with parents, that so many of our hopes, but also our fears are connected with the technology. And with technology, I also mean that disconnection, with nature. So as parents and teachers, we have this love-hate relationship with technology these days. So we are very excited about the opportunities and the efficiency it brings, no doubt. We are also hopeful about, at least some things in the bright future it may create for our children. But we are also very suspicious about what it is stealing from us, and we are downright fearful that it might be just snatching away our children from us, not just physically, but like they won't have the same values, they'll not respect our own culture. So we all have so many fears about technology. So while we are aware that the potential of technology is there to change the human lives for better, it is natural that, what we constantly hear and read about AI, social media, and digital technology, it really makes us anxious. uh, Because see what happens that ideally, everyone should be responsible for creating safe environment, safe enriching media environment for our children. So tech companies, businesses, governments, everyone. But unfortunately, when it comes to harms and risk to children, in most cases, everyone else gets scot free, and the ultimate blame is pushed to parents that, well, your children, you should have looked after them, which is not fair because, every stakeholder has a role to play in this. But so ultimately, we always say that what were the parents doing, So, for example, the kind of things that I have been coming across, on social media, in news. So I'll just read out a few things. So I just read that a new study found that 1 in 6 internet using children across Africa and Asia experience technology facilitated child sexual abuse and exploitation. Right. There are constant instances of data theft, cyberbullying, social media addiction, and mental health issues related to AI use that are reported from every part of the world. Deepfake is affecting mental health of teenagers and also have already driven some to end their lives. Teens are getting addicted to online gambling. That's the recent report that I read. And young people are turning to chatbots as companions and therapists, which again has its own consequences. So it is very, very normal and natural that as parents and grandparents, we are anxious. Pratyusha, next slide, please. So I have now another question for you. And I'll again just request you to put the responses in the chat that when you read something like this, what is your knee-jerk reaction? How do you, immediately get into action? What do you start doing? So, I remember the movie Hindi Medium where the mother, as soon as she would notice something, her thought process would go like 5 steps further that Abhi, he'll do this. So now naturally the next thing is a drug, and then, he will get into a criminal ring. So if you are a parent like that, you very quickly start experiencing the doom. Yes, so you do time restriction, you start correcting your children, or maybe the situation. What else? How many of you are in favor of banning social media, under the age of 16, which is happening in a lot of countries? Right, we also start snooping. Trisha, you are in favor? Okay. Yes, for the social media ban. So there are some people who are in favor of banning the thing. So that is what we usually see, that, we start supporting banning because we think that, okay, no social media, no problems. But it's rather simplistic because lots of studies are already showing that it's not working the way we think it would work. And it's much more complicated than that. Or we start enforcing very strict rules at home. How many times, like, I've told you to do this, like 15 minutes over, stop this, that kind of a thing. There's a lot of suspicion and surveillance. Okay, what was that site that I suddenly saw you closing? That kind of thing. Why are you in the basement looking at your phone? Okay. Or if you feel helpless, there is just, silent worry that, okay, what is going to happen to my kid? But let me tell you that none of this is effective to the fullest without a thoughtful and nuanced execution, right? Also, there are other ways of approaching media and technology in our children's lives. So I would say that we love it or hate it. I mean, we have to accept that technology is here to stay. So understanding it, making friends with it, using it safely and smartly, that's to our best advantage as parents and also to the advantage of our children. And this is what the talk is about. Okay, so I have another question for you. I hope you don't mind me asking these questions. Next one, Pratyusha, please. Okay. So how do you handle living and working in very diverse groups? Those who are working in environments where there are people from all different cultures and countries, working with you, living with you in the same townships, in the same colonies. Your children are friends with children from all different cultures, religions, countries. Uh, do you look at it positively or with fear? Uh, what's the normal response to this? Would some of you just say it in the chat? Like, do you, this situation is something very enriching or something, yes, as you said, producing anxiety? Anyone else? And certainly many parents have told us that, when they see that their child is friends with somebody who's totally different, it does produce anxiety in them. Okay, right. So we usually then become uneasy. We have the stranger danger alerts in our mind, and then we advise our child that stick to the in group, be with people who are like us and not different. And this is the second part of the talk, that how do we handle diversity, which is going to increase in workspaces, in living spaces, in families. And this is the second part of the talk. And we will see, if we have enough time, we'll look at it in detail. Otherwise, we'll just touch upon it. Okay. So Now, before we move to the strategies for parents for navigating digital media and diversity, it will be helpful for us to understand that what are some unique challenges of rising generation alpha, which is like right now the youngest cohort, growing up. So unlike me, was like us, we're like from baby boomers or Gen X, we were all digital immigrants. We didn't grow up, we were not born in the media saturated environment. But unlike us, the parents of Gen Alpha are not new to technology, I would say, because they have already experienced technology, occupying a more central space in their lives. But at the same time, I think no recent cohort of parents has had to admit so openly how uncertain they feel about future ready. What does future ready even mean for their children, right? Because norms that were once they felt very solid are now wobbling. Advice that worked yesterday, suddenly it's it's not working anymore. So the more we understand the world that Gen Alpha is growing up in, the better we can help, to build it and thrive in this kind of world. So Pratyusha, next slide, please. So how do you see your kid's childhood as different from yours? Like, which is like one big, big difference that you have observed between your childhood and your children's childhood? Okay, they encounter friends with ulterior motives. I agree that past innocence is rapidly disappearing. Playtime in open has reduced to a great extent. And even when it is playtime in the open, it's more structured. That informal, unstructured play is completely gone. There is definitely more technology, more affluence. Yes, I agree. Food adulteration. Yes, that's also true. So we agree that though certain things about childhood has still remain intact, is that parents still play a very important part in a child's life. There are lots of ways, their childhood is different. So let's just see, how is Gen Alpha's childhood different, right? So very first thing I would say is that connectivity, AI, gadgets, these are not features for them to be adopted. They are utilities. As unremarkable, okay, I see another point. They don't need parents for consultation. Yes, Google and chatbot is here, very true. And we don't want that to happen, so that's our role is more important. Uh, yeah, their curiosities get validated through a screen. Yes, I absolutely agree. And that's what I was just going to say, that for them, screens and connectivity are like what electricity is for us. We just take its presence for granted. And this matters because policy, schooling, parenting, everything, everybody who has been from the past generations, we all treat technology as an add-on, something that we have to add to our life. Whereas they think that it's an integral part of life. It's like what is water to the fish. Hmm? So technology has become a social environment. And it's not just a set of gadgets, the way we saw it. So technology structures their attention, it mediates their relationships, and it shapes choices long before we even notice. Right? The second big thing is diversity is now a daily reality for a lot of urban people. Yeah, I think we should discuss this. A China model doesn't work in India. So, wait a minute. As technology I couldn't see the complete sentence. Right, China a lot of time has just stuck to its homegrown technology, whereas like we are free to experience the global technology, and it has both positives and some limitations. So what we see is that earlier, diversity used to be like a theme in annual day program, or maybe there was one diversity day in the school. But now it's a daily reality of your classroom, of playgrounds. We also, families are becoming more diverse because there are so many more, intercaste, intercountry, interreligion marriages. There is urban rural interactions. Also, children now come across so many different kind of identities and experiences. So the debates around all these things, which didn't even enter our lives as children, have already entered these children's lives, and these debates have already begun, very early. Even like in large metros, or if you have worked abroad, you will have observed that a single classroom, would have so many languages, so many new names, pronouns, holidays from so many traditions. And for us, it is something that has been newly introduced to our lives, but for Gen Alpha, they are again growing up in this environment, which they assume is natural. So now the thing is that the question for us adults is not whether we should permit these conditions. These conditions are not waiting for our permission. So we just have to think that, okay, how do we steward them so that, human judgment, dignity, and care, they stay at the center? Because ultimately, we really want to make sure that these things don't disappear. Like as somebody said, you're worried about empathy missing from children's lives. So that should be our focus. We should also remember that Gen Alpha's earliest memories have been formed during COVID years, right? So that has left its impact. So it has always been a combination of constraints and improvisation, right? So mostly these are kids born from 210 onwards. So they've experienced COVID, and COVID just didn't introduce them to technology. It normalized hybrid life. So we even find it a point of discussion whether a hybrid work environment is good or not. They have taken it for granted that this is how life is. So school easily moved between kitchen and the classroom. Their pediatrician delivered advice via their screen. They are equally comfortable forming friendships across a neighborhood and across a server. It doesn't really make a big difference to them. And its practical implication is that flexibility is not a perk for this generation. It is their default operating mode. So as soon as they feel any rigidity, any rigid schedules, rigid rules, and lack of flexibility, you will see them revolting. So this is one big truth about Gen Alpha. They are not comfortable with rules built for a single channel instruction or 9 to 5 strict schedules, or when things don't give them opportunity to adapt. So this is something that we have to think about. And what happens is that uh, because we think that, we start technology and we stop it, but for them, technology is running in the background. And this actually gives, it and brings forth a lot of tension and anxiety. This also has a huge implication for learning again, which is again a headache for many parents because they don't learn the way we learn, right? And some of our worry is legitimate also, like they have such short attention spans. When they cannot listen to long lectures, they cannot focus for a very long time. But I've also seen that when you give them something to really create and innovate and work, with their brain and hands, they can spend hours on it. Right? So instead of hour-long drills and trudges, they would prefer maybe 10-minute sprints. 10 minutes and then something else in 10 minutes, but it adds on, right? So they want to loop back whenever they like. For us, when the teacher finished the lecture, we had no way of going back to it, but these kids know that they can go back to things anytime they want. So they're not so much worried about absorbing everything, right when it is given to us, right? Also, the whole idea of basic literacy is changing because it is um, now things have been added, like algorithmic awareness is there. Why did I see what I see in my feed? There is a source sense, who made it, and how do I know if an authentic person has made it? And in middle of all of that is AI, right? And then we have to again think about when to use it, when to put it away, how to acknowledge AI use. This is all part of basic literacy now. So AI is your co-writer, your lab partner, your friend, tutor, counselor, analyst, everything. So now the thing is that when this is how they are growing up as parents, how do we keep human judgment, care, and creativity? This thing should still be in charge. But the most importantly, amidst all of this, how do we retain the joy and spontaneity, right? I think these are the two things that define childhood. And we don't want these things to disappear from our children's life. So I would say that some friction will be there because see, when your past and the future are so different, some friction is going to be natural. So I would say that let's treat friction as information, right? Not as a failure. We can ask that, okay, what this conflict is trying to tell me, to teach me, where can we adjust and try again? Right? It is also very important for us to pick our battles as parents because there's so many things that are part of normal growing up. They are passing phases. It will go away. So we don't have to be over anxious about every little thing, right? So there are few things that really need our alertness and very serious action from us. And I have just through my research and reading and talking to parents, we have identified some concerns. I think that parents have to be very vigilant about. So let me tell you what these are. Body image issues and low self-esteem because of that. Because the more we tried in the women's movement to, say that, like body image is a serious issue, the industry and the media have rarely paid attention to it, and young boys and girls are very rapidly falling prey to this, especially now with all these beauty filters and, things where you can change your body shape and your face, and you see all these photoshopped images, like there's hardly anybody who is happy with how they look. So this is something parents need to be very vigilant about and do not add to that by saying negative things about your child's color, your child's weight, how the child looks. I think this is very, very important for parents. If we have time later, we can discuss that. The second is cyberbullying. And it is important to remember that your child could be a victim and your child could also be a bully and you don't know. So this is something that you have to be vigilant about because that includes emotional harassment, social exclusion, defamation, revelation of private details, intimidation. So if your child is experiencing any of this or you think is engaged in any of this, immediate action is needed. The third very worrying things and which is rising is online sexual abuse. Okay? The circulation of sexually explicit images, messages, leaking personal photos, deep fakes, rape threats, revenge porn. It's like very, very disturbing. And so you have to really make your child aware that this does happen. And then if your child is experiencing any of this, you have to create an environment there where they trust you and confide in you that this is what is happening, right? Okay. Cyber extremism in some cases is where your child falls, victim to ideological indoctrination. There is threats of violence, and then it also encourages children to become violent. So that is something to worry about. Commercial fraud and gambling, right? You all know about that. Grooming is something that is being discussed a lot in Western countries. That is when an adult prepares a child over a long time and interactions and, creates an environment which is ripe for sexual abuse and exploitation. So this is something you could read up on and make sure is not happening. And the last one I would say is see little bit of screen time, watching what they enjoy, like interacting with friends, perfectly normal, right? No, the slides are not changing because I want you to listen more than looking at the slides. So slides are not changing. So this is something, but if this becomes extreme, the next slide has the summary of all the points. So I'll just finish the last one and then there is a slide. So if your child extremely, prefers devices and AI as companion, and he or she shunning human contact and conversation to a great extent, this may have serious repercussions for their relationship. So this is something that you have to be vigilant about. So Pratyusha, next one, please. Yeah, so this is a slide which summarizes all the 7 points. If you want to take a picture or I'll just skip it for a few seconds. So so are you done? Shall we move forward to the last point? Yeah. And that's the most, I hope we have enough time. We have 10 minutes more. Yeah, okay. So now we come to the most important section is that what helps. So I have a 7-point toolkit that, okay, as parents, these are the 7 things that you can do, to help your children navigate this environment better, right? So very first thing, and which we already do for our health, is that we should design a family media diet, right? It's our responsibility to, like we decide our nutrition diet, we plan healthy meals, we plan what product should come in our house and what we will never buy. Similarly, we should decide our family media diet, and it should also include some media fasting, I would say. Right. The important caveat here is that you plan it with your kids and not for them. The media diets have to be planned keeping your kids in the loop. So you are not making decisions for them. You are collectively making these decisions, right? And also we have to make sure that parents also follow rules. Then if a diet has been decided, we decide that, okay, certain spaces are sacred spaces, for example, nobody will bring the phone on the dinner table. Then the parents also equally have to follow that. Because, one thing I've observed that I see parents and grandparents so much more addicted to their smartphone than kids these days, And I have seen so many parents, and I know parents are hassled and with job and home, and there's so much going on. It's very easy to use your phone as a babysitter. I've seen so many moms telling me that, my baby won't eat till like I show this cartoon on the phone. But my question is that who started it? The baby was not old enough to start this habit, right? Who puts the child in this habit? So, when you plan media diets, you also have to follow a diet here. So same thing for AI, they're clear conversations. Also, I would say that if possible for you, if time and your schedule permits, a good media diet includes both a good mix of co-viewing, as we said, like watching things together, doing things together, and individual viewing, right? So what happens that this is the time when you can really understand your kids' response to what they are watching and experiencing, and so many other things come up, right? But listen to them without immediately making judgmental remarks. This is the most important thing. So it is also very helpful for parents if you enroll them yourselves in supportive peer groups. There's so many online parents groups where these things are discussed. There are newsletters, there are mailing lists. So that they suggest you good media products that you can enjoy with your whole family. They also tell you what is free for you to enjoy, right? So I think getting updated on these things is very useful. We've also find that if you co-create, so like creative projects using technology, right? Creating greeting cards, festive messages, memory books, films, travel albums. These would help in initiating conversation around technology and also many other topics. And besides, it brings creative joy and togetherness in the family, which we always look for. So this is one thing. And at the end of this, I would say that it's equally important to plan non-media activities for the family, right? Because many a times, and this is again, I'm not saying this, the research has shown that children turn to their gadgets because of boredom, loneliness, and lack of other interesting activities. And then, of course, they lose interest in other activities, and this becomes their only go-to thing. But it starts with, like, child feeling lonely at home, there's nobody to play with, parents are busy, and then they turn to screens. So whatever works best for your kid, whether it's sports, theater, music, art, volunteering, science projects, carpentry, cooking, gardening, whatever it is, make sure that they are hooked to a non-media hobby. And then what happens sometimes that then even their media use is very much structured around this hobby if they really get interested in it. So this is something very important. Um, See, what worries uh, us is that, can you imagine that what would happen to a child who are only constantly interacting with voice-based assistants, for example? Like, what happens that they start assuming, yes, very true. And so here what happens that they start assuming that, if you ask something, the other person has to immediately answer. If they are questioned, challenged, ignored by a human being, they find it very difficult to accept that. Even like the recent research has shown that AI chatbots are trained to agree with you and not confront, right? So once you get into this kind of a habit, when you think that the response has to be immediate, I can't wait for anything, I can't fast forward this person, and then they think that, oh, humans are so boring, technology is so much better. So we don't want that kind of a situation. So I would say that this is like one thing that you can do. The other very similar point is that we have to move now with Gen Alpha from obedience to engagement. So the former strict parenting model, when we decided things for them, we said, okay, kids, these are the rules. Those don't work. So you have to involve them in decision making. Yes, you are making rules. Ask them to first make the first draft of rules. And very often we have seen that when they have made the rules, they make sure that they follow, right? But these things have to start as early as possible. The other pitfall of very strict parenting is not just about media. But the thing is that, if your child is used to continuously receiving instruction from the parents, like what to do, what not to do, who to talk with, they don't develop a sense of discretion on what is right and wrong. They don't actually develop decision-making skills. They will make mistakes, but making mistakes is a very important part of learning the skills. And then it becomes a lifelong habit to just succumb to power, bow to power. So it's very important that right from the beginning, you involve your children in decision making. That doesn't mean that, there are no clear-cut family guidelines or you say yes to everything that say, but if your language is not like victim blaming, why did you do this? Don't you have sense? Instead of, okay, good, thanks for telling me, let's fix this. Okay, let's find out a way to fix it. You develop a kind of trust where your children will come and talk to you. Okay, the third is media and information literacy, and a whole different talk can be given on that. And this can be done in some ways at home. Schools can also have formal sessions on media and information literacy. So if you teach critical thinking skills about media to children, then they know themselves how to resist harmful content, how to, spot misinformation, how to not get trapped by manipulation. And so this is, of course, the harm part. But with a good media and information literacy program, children also learn how to use these platforms as spaces of creativity, learning, and connection. Because believe me, a lot of good also happen on the internet. And we don't want to completely deprive our children of these things, right? So it's important that we create this kind of resilience when they themselves know what to choose, what to keep away from, right? So the fourth is, so the fourth is about what kind of conversations, you should have. I have identified 3 issues that have to all the time come up in your conversations about media, and especially digital media. And there has to be a very clear playbook in the family. So one is consent, right? Nothing should be shared without an enthusiastic, informed yes or no. Whether you're sharing something about a friend, you're sharing a photo. I would say even when you are sharing something about your child, because time and again, we have seen that sharenting, what we call parents sharing things about their children. We call it sharenting. It has its own risk. Even before your child actually starts using media, the child has a whole history online, which can be misused, right? So consent, very important. See, if I go to a party and I want to post a picture, I ask people in the picture that, are you okay, with me posting this picture? So only if other people are okay, you post their pictures. Second is control. Teach your child that once it is sent, it's gone from you. You have no control over it, where it will be used, how it will be used, where it will be stored, right? So once you are releasing that control, you're releasing all of these possibilities. So think 10 times before you actually post or share anything, okay? And ultimately, the third thing is that no coercion. Don't succumb to any peer or adult pressure, threat, bribes, or some adults telling you or a friend telling you that keep the secret. So nothing should be a secret. At the same time, see, adolescence, especially, is an age when children do have their, private things they want to keep secrets. That's a different thing, but nothing that is risky or threatening. So what we advise is that, we have to create exit scripts. So as soon as your child is in a situation, which is harmful or risky, they have to just say these sentences: I don't keep secrets that make me uncomfortable. I don't do this. I don't forward this kind of images, and get out, right? So we would say that, okay, a clear plan. Step 1, stop engaging. Step 2, Save evidence. Step 3, block and report on platform. And step 4, tell a trusted adult immediately, or at least on the same day. So, like all of us now are aware of talking to children about the good touch and bad touch. It's a similar kind of thing. This kind of conversations have to keep happening in the family. So similarly, I would say that, transparency is very important, and because you become too panicky, you start snooping, you look through your child's phone and then you say, why did you send this text? Who did you write the message? Who is this girl? Like, who's this boy? That will take your children away from you. And remember this very carefully, that your children don't have to share their passwords with you. They could be having 10 accounts with 10 different passwords. You won't know. So, and they are much better at doing these things with technology than many of us know, right? So the only way out here is that, talk to them about possible dangers and threats, show them the good side of technology, and then develop that trust so that they are ready to share their online spaces and activities with us. This is the only thing that ultimately works. So very connected to that is that reducing technology gap with our children is another step we can take, because we can't afford to be ignorant about technology. Right? If that happens, there is a generational distance, and our children start thinking that, my parents don't know anything. Like, how can they have any authority on me? Right? Like, I'm so much smarter than them. But a lot of kids who are good with features in technology still need guidance about ethical things, reducing harm, engaging very meaningfully. And adults are very important in doing these things for them. So I don't say that you have to learn every new app or be an expert gamer, but you have to be now aware of that, okay, what is happening? Like, where is AI heading? What are some of the things that as parents you have to be aware about? So there shouldn't be very wide technology gap between you and your parents. Even before you buy a gadget, don't get pressurized by your children. Do your research. Does the child really need that gadget? What good it can do? What harm it can have? Have that conversation, make certain conditions, and then buy. And the final 7th point is advocacy, right? Because people like parents, educators, all of us need to advocate for media and information literacy sessions at school, right? We have to join support groups and organizations. There are many of them who are fighting for safe internet for young people. And the more we support them, the better and safer the internet will become for our children. So I think, Pratyusha and Trishant, I must stop here and take questions. And we can maybe leave the diversity part out from today's talk. Up to you.
If you have a few more slides left, I think. Right?
On that, I don't have any slides as such.
We can cover it in a minute.
I should quickly go through it.
A brief, maybe?
Or we can take questions
Another session.
on this part.
Right. Right.
What do you want to do?
We can do another session on the timers.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So because if there are not many questions, we'll see.
Right.
Yeah, but if there are questions, I think let's take questions on this.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you so much,
my big message on the diversity part is that shutting down is not the same as staying safe, right? So again, as technology, diversity can bring many beautiful things in our life. Only thing, again, we have to learn how to navigate, where to spot red flags, where to observe green flags, and a lot of things our children can do on the internet that can make them truly global citizens. I would say. So that was going to be my key message for the spot. So questions, please, on what we have discussed.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you for the presentation. Before we move on to the Q&A, I'd like to just take 30 seconds of everyone's time for a quick poll. This will help us get to know you better and tailor future topics that we bring to you. A big thanks to everyone here today. Your presence and participation means a lot to us. While you fill out the poll, I would also like to extend my heartfelt thanks to our esteemed speaker, Ms. Professor Manisha Patil Shela, for sharing her valuable time and insights with us. While everyone's answering the poll, I'd like to quickly mention the upcoming talks. And Natusha will post the registration links in the chat box. You can register after you answer the poll while we are proceeding with the Q&A. We have Sadia Hurjuk and Dr. S. Sandeep Kumar, who's a consultant neurophysician. Sadia Hurjuk is a psychologist. The title is Need for Dementia, Early Diagnosis, How Cognitive Stimulation Protects Memory. We have PG Bhatt after that, President and Director of Puma, on 20th June 2026, 11 a.m. onwards. He's going to talk about your code, your voice, understanding electoral roll revisions in India. Following that, we have Less is More, How Minimalism Can Save the Planet. The speaker is Ms. Ritika Chawla, educator and environment enthusiast. She's speaking on the 4th of July, 11 a.m. You can find the registration links in the chat box and register. Kindly share it with your friends and family. I request everyone to quickly interact with the board so that we can move on to the question and answers.
Yeah, I see a raised hand already.
I'd like to invite Shravani ma'am, initiate the Q&A and take the talk further. Good morning, ma'am.
Manisha, I would like to thank you. I have 3 grandsons, and I know how critical this topic is, not just to parents, but also the grandparents, because
Yes.
I'm noticing a lot of grandparents just about showing the phone to them.
Yeah.
So, it's a very scary time. Like, it's lucky that my grandsons have grandparents on both sides, the whole family, the whole joint family around them all the time.
Yeah.
I don't see that elsewhere. And I see even 6-month-old babies are given screens to eat. There's zero emotional regulation happening with children. And this talk of yours has been a lot of guidance to me too. There's certain, we all know about gambling, about sexual abuse, about grooming. But, when you bring it all together and say, this is the area you need to work on, this is the area you need to keep your eyes open. When you said, pick your battles as parents, when you said, listening to them without making judgments so that they don't go away from us, giving them the freedom to come back to us. I think these are actually going to be life savers for a lot of parents.
Thank you. And, there's like so much good also out there.
Yeah,
So I think it's equally important. And we have also noticed that children look at us, for that kind of guidance. And we can actually, drive them to those kind of sites that, look, here is a beautiful site where you can do this. Here is a site where you can meet, the like-minded children, or participate in a global cause. So there is a lot of good also happening. I think that's very important here.
That's true. But then as parents, as grandparents, we are not aware of those sites.
Yeah.
What I'm seeing is the kids are so watching violence so much. And I'm seeing, I'll come back to that. First, I'd like to thank all the participants. This is an extremely important topic for all of you all to come and hear. There's a great need for the awareness in this area to be developed. And thank you to the WishwaTalks team. Fantastic talk. It's a much needed talk for today's times. Thank you so much to everybody. Coming back to our conversation, I noticed my grandsons were watching a lot of violence from when they were kids. And what happens is at some point, people think that only brawn, being strong is the only way out, which they cannot be. So then I had to say, okay, look at Hanuman. Look at the way he is. You know, he was very sad that he couldn't jump and go to Lanka. He was feeling weak. And then someone came and spoke to him and gave him courage, and then he went. So, you know, the Indian mythological stories have the accept humans as having weaknesses also, which I'm not seeing that the Western cartoons are having. So, yeah, I mean, thank you so much. We can start with the questions. Mr. Shmuel, would you like to ask yours? Please unmute yourself and ask.
Now I unmuted me. You hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. A very interesting presentation. And I want to ask you a question. How online technologies, how digital technologies can support improvement education of children?
How can technology help in the with the children?
How
In
can
their
online tech and
education, you
digital
mean?
tech,
Yes.
digital tech support education of children?
Yeah. So what we have found that, you know, there's lots of creative things that can be done using technology for education, right? So again, when I was going to talk about this global citizenship part, let me say that internet is the cheapest and the easiest way for us to understand about the cultures elsewhere, other countries, cultures. You know, if you want to learn, say you are learning a foreign language, AI can be a beautiful learning companion for practicing foreign language, for example, right? So you can also join online communities of young people, you know, where there are lots of discussion threads, and many of these sites are also moderated. So the important thing is to be part of the right kind of communities and the right kind of networks. Also, see, these things cannot be imposed on a child. So it's very important that we first identify what they are interested in, and then find appropriate resources on the internet. The beauty of the internet is that you can, you know, get so many things from beyond your geographic proximity. So if your child is really, really, say, interested in physics and there is nobody in your surroundings, you know, who is a physics expert, I mean, he or she can easily find a good mentor online. And this, I've seen many people, many young people benefiting from this kind of mentorship. I've come across so many design communities, for example, where young designers get mentored by experienced designers. So identifying the supportive networks and communities can help a lot in education.
In fact,
Thank you very much.
when my kids were small, I used to have these Jumpstart series discs, and at a very young age, I could introduce them to mathematical concepts of fractions which made mathematics a breeze for my children. And we used to sing songs along with it. So every day, one song we used to, whatever they wanted to sing, we would just put and we would listen and sing together. So yes, it does have a lot of advantages.
Potential, yes.
Yes. So there was one thing you had said, exit strategy. I don't keep secrets that make me comfortable. What were those 5 things you had mentioned?
Yeah, so see, when you have to teach the child, whenever you are encountering a difficult or problematic interaction, it could be from a peer, it could be from a stranger, it could be from an adult, they little bit know, but and they might, get them into conversation, then ask them about certain information, get them into confidence, then ask them to send their pictures. If things escalate, then they would say, okay, how about sending a nude picture, for example. So you have to really tell your child that all these things can happen. And if such a thing happen, these are the 5 steps you're going to take. That first of all, you disengage, you save the evidence, you report the person, and you have to tell this to a trusted person. It could be a parent, it could be uncle or an aunt, it could be a teacher, a grandparent. So all these conversations have certainly now become very important, because even when I was raising my daughter, when my daughter was young, even I wasn't aware that like such things were going on the internet, We
So
were,
you 5 things. So what were those 5 things, ma'am?
Yeah, so disengage. First of all, let me just quickly come to them. So you stop engaging first. That stop the conversation right there. Save the evidence, right? Then you block that person. So they cannot reach out to you again. And then you first report on platform, because all major platforms have a reporting mechanism. And then you tell a trusted adult, if possible immediately. If nobody's around, then the very same day, the earliest possible, you have to tell this to the trusted adult. And now imagine that if you have to be this trusted adult, like you have to know about these things and be sensitive to the child. But see, what happens that we immediately pounce on the child. Why were you on that platform? Didn't I tell you not to do that? Why did you talk to this person? So most children then just shut off and then prefer to handle it on their own. And this is something I think we have all of us have to learn. I also learned it very gradually, but now I often ask my daughter that, okay, what are some of the things that I do, like make you uncomfortable or, scared or like make you disappointed in the way I behaved, and once she knows that I mean, to change, like she is honest about those things.
There's a lot of appreciations. One is from SRK. Thanks for hosting a very good topic. Vishwa team, long way to go and choosing quality content. Looking forward for further talks. Yeah. So now I see a lot of, if you see the strata of Indian society, people who are interested in parenting, people who are interested in such things, are at least have a glimpse of it. How are you seeing the majority of our country?
I'm very worried. I tell you why. It's not even digital media, but the kind of movies parents bring their children to. I'm shocked. I'm like, how irresponsible you could be to bring your child to this movie just because you don't want to miss it, right? So unless we do something very concrete and consistent, and schools also step up, I think schools also then take the easy way out and say, you're not going to bring cell phone to the school. And they think that they've done their duty. So lot of sensitization and education, I think, is required.
Should it be a part of the curriculum, this kind of?
Absolutely, I would say.
Okay. Today, with the heat, it's really sad to say that we're not able to send children out to play. So the only thing that I'm noticing everywhere is the children are glued to the TV from morning till night. And you had suggested that we should give them alternatives.
Yeah.
And some of the things you suggested were hobbies, encourage plays, encourage all this. But what happens when they're not available? You can't send the children to 10 classes a day. You can send them for 2 or 3 classes. What happens after that on holidays? What do you advise?
So what I advise that there is so much of innovative plays possible, right? I remember, as a kid, we had like a theater group, just friends and cousins, like we would tie saris all around, like create kind of a stage. And, we would stage plays for friends and families and neighborhoods, right? Similarly, like making puppets and hosting puppet shows, creative writing, even cooking. Just tell them that find out something where media is not involved. Sometimes even parents have to spend some time, like brainstorm ideas. And some creative things can be done with media as well, like designing things, creating things, like give them all the old photographs and say that, okay, can you scan these and make like a nice family, memory book. So I think if we give it a little thought, there's quite a few things for which we don't need so much of like going outside.
Is there any literature or anything available online which guides parents as to what activities to do with what age groups instead of putting them on social media?
Yeah, so there are parenting groups, but I don't know any specific websites where I've seen that, but I'll definitely like keep my eyes open and I'll share it with the Wishwa team, so they can just share it over email with everybody or share the links.
Yeah.
I think it's very, very, very important.
Yeah.
Or you go back to your childhood and, think of all the things that you could do.
Yeah.
Like applying mehendi, for example, used to be a nice one afternoon's creative outlet, so things can be done.
How do you disengage a person from social media, a child from social media?
So disengagement is very difficult. So again, make them part of the decision making. First, they have to buy that what is too much engagement doing to them? What are they missing out? What could be some of the repercussions, for the future? So, for example, I'll give you an example about AI. All the adolescents naturally are very excited about AI. But I realized that, to my undergrad students, once I showed them how much every prompt, what environmental damage every prompt does, environmental damage,
Wow.
Yeah, because every AI uses so much energy, so much water. All the data centers like guzzle up like so much of drinking water. They generate so much heat, which is damaging the environment, and very few people are talking about it.
Yes.
So as soon as I brought the data, the examples, the cases, my undergrad students were like, wow, like, okay, I'm not going to, I will use AI when I need to, but I'm not going to just do it to, okay, show me a picture of a cat wearing this kind of hat, kind of prompts, So I think children are sensitive. If we expose them to the correct reasons why certain things should not be done, I think they understand, most of them.
I have 3 grandsons, and my daughter had put a 40-day fast that they're not going to be on social media, the entire family. And
Yeah.
then the kids were left with me because she was traveling. And then when for some reason, the phone came out, one of the grandsons said, no, my mom said I cannot watch phone. The other kid was very happy to watch.
Yeah, yeah. So see, kids also differ, right? Kids
Yeah.
also differ, and one approach that works with one kid never works with another kid, even when both are your own kids, So you have to understand like what works the best for
Yeah.
your
And
child.
this is with people who are educated like us. What about the help who's with us? They don't know what their children are watching. They have
Yes,
no
yes.
clue, and they have no way of understanding or even guiding them.
Yeah, and that's why I say that it's wrong to put all the responsibility on the parents. I'm very much against it. We don't question the industry or big businesses who are just for the sake of profit allowing people to, just recently, like think of all the apps that lets you just undress a person, for example, and they are freely available and people are making money producing this kind of app and nobody's stopping them. So it's such a
But security is not strong enough in India.
nowhere. I'm not even saying India, like it's very difficult, and
The app
I think
is
everyone,
called
yeah,
the app is called Grok, and
yes,
it's by Elon Musk. So
Yeah.
yeah, a lot of cases have been made against Grok to
yeah,
remove the adult content, and they've done it again and again, but it's not up to the mark at all. The thing about AI is it can be tweaked and it can be made of, like, you can fool AI if you're smart enough. You can tweak your words, you can bend your words, and you can make it generate scenes that are explicit in nature. But AI doesn't think it's explicit because it doesn't think like us. So i- right now, there's a lot of cases pending against Grok AI in India, and yeah, I don't know when this is going to stop.
yeah,
Also, we are very complicit in actually giving more power to all of these institutions in India. We are selling capital, we are selling lands, especially towards the southern coast of India. We are giving a lot of space to like companies like Google to make data centers which help generate AI content.
yeah.
And all of the companies, India is slowly going to become a AI uh, data center hub in the next 10 to 15 years or so. And
And then we have to think about all the water it will use, all the heat it will generate. So the complexity is enormous, I would say, and the technology develops so fast, and smart crooks act so fast, that few governments can match that pace in designing and executing laws, about it. So that's why it's ultimately then as parents, then we have to say nobody else is going to protect my child. So I should do it. But as you rightly said, that how many parents are equipped to actually do that? So schools, I think, also have to now play a very important role.
There's one question from Mr. SRK. When our children become parents themselves, what would make you feel that we truly succeeded as parents? Not their achievements or status, but the values, character, and the life lessons they chose to carry forward and pass on to the next generation. If he's put a question mark there.
Which value you mean I would cherish more? As I said, empathy is something I think if as human we lose empathy. Also, I am very much aware that all of us are worried about our own safety and our children's, and so we don't want to take any chances. But just shunning everything that is different from us, every time different doesn't mean inferior or risky. So being more open-minded, not sacrificing your own safety, but being more open-minded. Yes, Darsh.
so I was born in 92, and at a very young age, my dad used to run a canteen in a theater. So watching movies for free was free for me. I used to just walk into any movies. And the kind of movies I would get to watch, you'd have these dialogues, "Mard ko dard nahi hota, mard rota nahi hai," and all these things, right? And it really seeped into me while I was that young.
Yeah.
As I grew older, I had an opportunity to engage more directly with nature, work more directly with nature, and I got more sensitive. And I didn't feel bad about it. I felt better about it, honestly. I
Yes.
could see how I was unnecessarily turned into maybe something more harder than I was, or
Yeah.
more closeted and more egoistic, more uh, with a lot more boundaries. And then when the next comes next generation, they have phones as soon as they're born. Um, a lot of people from my generation itself have kids who directly gave phones to their kids, like because they had work, both of the parents had work. So the kids started absorbing. I've seen something better in Gen Alpha, like they can distinguish slightly more better than Gen Z, because Gen Z was at the peak of it when a whole lot of political propaganda and everything was there on Instagram up front without any proper regulatory or filtration processes and everything. They were just children and they absorbed all of it. And say Jai Shri Ram and everything got embedded so hardcore in a very different way, in a radical, rebellious way rather than a very good moral value way. And eventually, we start using AI, and we have definitive studies from institutions like MIT that say that the use of generative AI may erode human cognition due to over-reliance.
Yes.
And this is very much happening. And I think somewhere government has always done this, like, okay, there's something bad happening, make them watch cricket. That is something Rome also used to do with gladiators. There's something bad happening. Okay, let's make them watch cricket. There's something bad happening. Okay, let's give them the tools they want with which they can stay distracted. Or, you know, so how do you create that gap where the kids can be maybe more empathetic and sensitive towards the environment and nature, like the external environment on which the world actually runs, even AI? Like clean water, clean air, clean fire, everything. The world actually runs on these things
Yeah.
rather than. So how can we create that message for kids, or how do we embed this within their minds at a very young age that you can be smarter than AI? You can use it as a tool to back you up, but you don't completely go ahead and rely on it. And at the same time, you don't give it so much power that it will destroy the environment you live in.
Yeah.
So I've always been very confused between these things, that the gap is slowly closing down so fast.
It's
Yeah.
a struggle. It's a struggle, I would say. I'm just hoping that, this generation, like for themselves, see the negative things, happening
Yeah.
through and then there is kind of a backlash. I'm just hoping, because sometimes, see, you raise your child in a different way in your family, but that child ultimately has to go out in the world, and they also suffer at times because their workplace values could be something totally different, over competitive, or they don't care for empathy. They just care for material rewards. So there will be a time when, there will be clashes there. So it's a lifelong struggle, I would say. And then it's a part of a very large, I think, more complex system, right? And that's what I was recently reading, that it's very easy to say that, oh, because of social media, there are all these mental health issues. And they found out that, no, there's so many more mental health issues in children because of, say, family poverty, or just because you are poor, and your parents have no time, like they busy working 4 jobs to just, you know, provide you just, the basics. When parents don't get along, that affect children's mental health. But all these things are very complex things, and it's easy to, blame it on social media and say that, yeah, look, it's all because of social media. And that would be a very simplistic way of thinking about it.
And really, thank you, Trishant, for bringing a very important point, reducing human cognition due to over-reliance of AI. I'm noticing that with my own grandkids. I'm like worried, will they even know how to read or write at the way things are going on? Handwriting might disappear. Simple mathematics like additions and subtractions may disappear, which is actually called illiteracy in our world.
Mhm.
So it's a difficult place to get. We are going to get into. With this, I'd like to thank Manisha Patak. It was the much needed talk, and we really need it. I don't know. I don't think we're doing enough. What you are doing should reach out to every school, every parent, and every grandparent across the country, at least.
We need a movement, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much to the Vishwa team. Thank you to the past participants once.
Thank you.
Trishant, take over.
Thank you, ma'am. Thanks to everybody who's joined in with us today. I hope you can join us next week too. Manisha, ma'am, you'll shortly see a breakout room link on your screen. You can join it, and ma'am, and I'll be there shortly. Um, for anybody who's missed this particular section of or part of this session, I'm going to share the recording link of this particular session in the chat box shortly. Just give me a moment. And save the link and recommend the parents who are again thinking about these things in their daily lives. You can share it with them. You can share it with ones who find it very helpful in terms of education, in terms of teaching. And you can always reach out to us through our website, through the support team, and send in your questions, and we can share it with the expert we bring onto our platforms and get them answered for you. Here's the link of this particular recording session. You can also visit WishwaTalks to check out all of our previous talks on various interesting topics. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope you have a really nice weekend. I'm going to see you again next week.